Fog clung to the White House lawn like a shroud, muting the snap of flags in the autumn wind. Inside the Oval Office, President Donald Trump drummed his fingers on the resolute desk, the air thick with the scent of fresh printer ink and tension. A red-bordered dossier, PRCEX.3754, lay open, leaked commerce files from the Biden era, exposing $5.1 billion in covert semiconductor shipments to Chinese proxies, timed just as Trump's second term dawned. The hypocrisy burned, Biden's tough on China rhetoric undone by his own administration's waivers. Across the globe, in the shadowed expanse of Zhongnanhai, President Xi Jinping stood at a lacquered table, the room's dim lanterns casting amber glows on silk tapestries. The leaks documents, translated and annotated, detailed 2.3 million restricted chips diverted under Biden's watch, fuel for Beijing's AI labs and missile tech, now public fodder. Biden preaches containment, she said, his voice a measured thunder, but his hands fed the dragon he feared. Aides nodded, the chamber silent save for the faint rustle of pages. The breach had erupted worldwide, CNN blasting, Biden's tech betrayal haunts Trump, Xinhua retorting with ex-president's legacy, American weakness exposed. Global markets quaked, S&P down 2.8%, $289 billion erased in semiconductor stocks. Trump's team seethed, this ghost from Biden's tenure threatened to derail his America First reset from day one. In the Oval, National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien jabbed at a tablet. The dump originated in a Berlin dark web node, but metadata screams Shenzhen, Horizon Data Systems, their go-to for digital sabotage. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo crossed his arms, exhaling sharply. She's not letting it die. He's pinning it all on Biden, making us clean up the mess. Trump leaned back, eyes narrowing at the Fox News feed dominating the screen. Xi's face appeared, broadcast from the Politburo's Grand Hall, his posture unyielding against a backdrop of gold-embossed seals. When a leader vows to starve innovation abroad yet starves his own nation in secret deals, the world witnesses true peril, she intoned, gesturing as ministers received binders, rosters of 18 U.S. firms for immediate sanction, tariffs spiking to 30% on lithium batteries. The riposte was surgical. Beijing revoked 9 tech collaborations, from quantum ventures in Shenzhen to biotech outposts in Beijing. Cables flooded the State Department. 28,000 American workers in China tagged for espionage audits, expulsions possible within 48 hours. O'Brien's voice dropped. He's firing at Biden's corpse to wound us. Claims the leaks prove his policies were a sham, $7.4 billion in hidden grants to skirt his own bans. Trump snorted, flipping the dossier shut. Crooked Joe strikes again. But if she thinks I'll apologize for his mess, he's dreaming. Whispers circled. Biden, from his Wilmington estate, had dodged comment, but allies leaked he'd blame deep state sabotage. Pundits buzzed, was this revenge from disgruntled Biden holdovers, or she exploiting old wounds? Dusk fell as the next torrent broke, archived emails from Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo's inbox, revealing $9.3 billion in diplomatic incentives routed to shadow facilities, enabling China's hypersonic advances that outpaced U.S. defenses by 14 months, per NSA reports. Biden's era had imposed export controls to hobble Beijing's military, yet these diversions armed their J-20 fighters and satellite jammers. In Zhongnanhai, she sipped jasmine tea with Foreign Minister Wang Yi, vapor rising like unspoken threats. The first leak had indicted Biden's duplicity, this one laid bare the dependency. America relied on Chinese assembly for 41% of advanced nodes, a vulnerability now weaponized. He built the bridge, she noted, and we cross it first. Wang outlined the leverage, control of 58% of global rare earths, poised to squeeze U.S. EV production to a halt. Back in D.C., Chief of Staff Susie Wiles rushed in, secure phone in hand. Beijing's missive glared, Biden's shadows must not eclipse new dawns, if hypocrisy persists, isolation follows. It detailed the blow, $18 billion in suspended U.S. soy and corn deals, unless the Biden-era treasons were publicly disavowed. Pompeo paced, his steps heavy on the rug. She's turning Biden into the villain to isolate you. NATO's murmuring, they're doubting our supply chain vows. Trump's fist clenched, voice rising. Not my fight? It is now. We exposed the real crooks, starting with Joe's ghosts. He signaled for a briefing room setup, but aides exchanged uneasy looks. A fresh alert chimed, internal White House chatter, hinting at Biden loyalists in the intel community, now feeding she more dirt. From Delaware, ex-President Joe Biden stared at his fireplace, phone to his ear. They want to bury me, he growled to a trusted advisor, but I'll rise from this ash. In Beijing, she gazed out at the Forbidden City's lanterns, a rare smile flickering. Let the ex-leader stir. His fire only lights our path. But in a nondescript Langley cubicle, a rogue analyst, haunted by Biden's unheeded warnings, cued the final upload, schematics for a U.S. chip fab in Taiwan, speeding toward Xi's servers. The salvo had landed, and the counterfire brewed. The dim glow of desk lamps pierced the Oval Office like accusatory fingers. President Donald Trump hunched over a cluster of briefing binders, the air heavy with the musk of old leather and cooling espresso. It was past midnight, 4 days into the firestorm, and the leak's aftershocks rippled outward, European allies issuing cautious statements, their leaders distancing from Washington's unreliable partnerships. Trump's second term, meant to roar with tariffs and triumphs, now choked on Biden's buried sins. Across the continent, ex-President Joe Biden paced his Wilmington study, the room's oak paneling absorbing the crackle of a low fire. Secure lines buzzed with calls from loyalists. The leaks had painted his legacy in shades of treason, $5.1 billion in chips that, per the documents, bolstered China's naval drones, outflanking U.S. carriers in the South China Sea simulations. They twist my warnings into weapons, Biden muttered to his chief advisor, Anita Dunn, her tablet aglow with polling data, his approval dipping to 38%, whispers of investigations mounting. In Zhongnanhai, President Xi Jinping convened his inner circle under vaulted ceilings, the scent of aged bamboo mingling with printer toner. The retaliation's first fruits arrived, reports of seized U.S. tech prototypes from a Shanghai warehouse, 47 servers loaded with AI algorithms, valued at $2.7 billion, now under state security review. She tapped a summary sheet. Biden's era gifted us the code, now we seize the hardware. Let the world see American overreach repaid in kind. Foreign Minister Wang Yi inclined his head, detailing the audit scope. 1,200 foreign firms probed, 23% American, with potential fines totaling $11 billion. The local clash ignited in a virtual summit, screens flickering between D.C. and Beijing. Trump, flanked by Pompeo and O'Brien in the Situation Room, faced Xi's delegation via encrypted feed. The Chinese side, led by Wang, opened with a slide deck, timelines of Biden-era waivers, cross-referenced with PLA advancements, hypersonic missiles achieving 12,000 kilometers per hour, thanks to smuggled processors. Your predecessor vowed containment, Wang said, his English clipped, yet enabled escalation. We demand reparations, $15 billion in frozen assets released, or our rare earth exports halt at 70% capacity. Trump's face reddened on the split screen. Biden's mess isn't mine to mop. Those chips? Biden's bureaucrats shipped them, ask him. Pompeo interjected, voice sharp. This is extortion. Your audits are theater, we've got intercepts showing state-sponsored hacks. The exchange devolved. Wang countered with footage of U.S. engineers detained in Guangzhou, 8 so far, accused of industrial espionage, their release tied to Trump's public disavowal of Biden's policies. O'Brien's pen scratched notes furiously, the stakes crystallized, without rare earths, U.S. F-35 production ground to a 40% shortfall, $3.2 billion in delays projected by week's end. Biden, monitoring from Delaware via a back-channel feed, slammed his fist on the desk. Trump's throwing me under the bus, fine. But if he folds, it's my fight too. He dialed a Senate contact, voice urgent. Push that resolution, subpoena the commerce holdovers. Expose the deep state rot. The call yielded fruit, a bipartisan bill drafted overnight, targeting legacy leaks, but it carried a trap, clauses that could boomerang, implicating Trump's transition team in the cover-up. In Beijing, the audit raid escalated into confrontation. Wang oversaw a dawn operation at a U.S.-funded lab in Shenzhen, 156 researchers questioned, documents seized revealing $4.8 billion in joint ventures now voided. One detainee, a mid-level exec from Intel, cracked under pressure, admitting Biden-era exemptions bypassed export controls for humanitarian tech, code for military dual use. She reviewed the transcript, a faint nod escaping. Biden's ghost confesses. Broadcast it, let America fracture. Trump's team reconvened as the confession leaked to Reuters. Markets plunged another 1.9%, $167 billion lost. Susie Wiles burst in with a flash drive. She's playing us, that exec? Our asset, flipped. Pompeo exhaled, rubbing his temples. Biden's pulling strings from the sidelines, his people are seeding doubt in the Intel briefings. Trump rose, voice thundering. No more games. We hit back, full sanctions on horizon, seize their U.S. assets, $9 billion worth. But as orders flew, Biden's advisor slipped into a shadowed D.C. cafe, meeting a journalist. The real story, she whispered, sliding a USB, is Trump's rush to blame, ignoring his own team's blind spots. The drop promised more, internal memos hinting at transition lapses that let the leaks fester. In Zhongnanhai, she ended the session with a directive. Pressure Biden through his proxies. If he stirs, we bury him deeper. Yet in a nondescript Quantico briefing room, a CIA analyst, torn between loyalties, decoded a fresh intercept. She's next target wasn't chips, but the ex-president's private communications, ripe for the next global blast. The divide widened, and the first alliance cracked. The low hum of fluorescent lights filled the Capitol's hearing room, where mahogany panels gleamed under the glare of C-SPAN cameras. Outside, a light drizzle pattered against the windows, but inside, the air crackled with confrontation. It was day 7 of the crisis, and the leak's venom had seeped into the heart of American power, documents now circulating among senators, revealing Biden-era exemptions that funneled $6.7 billion in dual-use tech, enabling China's quantum sensors to jam 68% of U.S. GPS signals in war games. Ex-President Joe Biden sat in the witness chair, his tie slightly askew, the room's stale scent of paper and cologne pressing in. The Senate Select Committee on Intelligence grilled him relentlessly, led by a hawkish chair from Trump's party. Mr. President, the senator intoned, sliding a printed email across the table, Raimondo's signature bold on the page, you authorized waivers for 1,450 shipments. How does that square with your export bans? Biden's jaw tightened, his voice steady. Those were calibrated risks, diplomatic levers against Beijing's aggression. Not gifts. But the numbers mocked him. 2.1 million processors, now powering PLA surveillance drones over Taiwan. In Zhongnanhai, President Xi Jinping watched the hearing via a secure feed, the chamber's incense curling lazily in the morning light. The revelations poured in, intelligence briefs detailing the Intel exec's confession, corroborated by seized drives from the Shenzhen raid, $3.9 billion in joint IP now claimed by the state. She turned to Wang Yi, his finger tracing a chart of U.S. market losses, $456 billion cumulative, with European firms like ASML halting deliveries to American clients, fearing Chinese reprisals. Biden defends the indefensible, she said softly. Let his testimony fuel our case, before the UN, demand restitution for stolen innovation. The clash erupted as Biden's testimony veered into accusation. The leaks? Timed for Trump's return, holdovers in your administration, Senator, who couldn't wait to rewrite history. Gasps rippled through the gallery, the chair banged his gavel, but the damage stuck, polls shifting, 52% of independents now viewing Biden's legacy as compromised. From the Oval, Trump monitored on a split screen, smirking to Pompeo. Crooked Joe's melting down. But if this boomerangs? O'Brien interjected, voice low. It already has, she's citing the hearing in their state media, claiming U.S. democracy exposes its own rot. Society stirred, protests swelled outside the Capitol, 4,200 demonstrators waving signs, Biden's chips, our chains, while tech hubs in Silicon Valley saw stock dips of 7.2%, layoffs projected at 18,000 jobs. Elite reactions fractured the landscape. A coalition of Biden alumni formed a legacy defense fund, raising $112 million overnight to counter the narrative, but it drew new players, lobbyists from Huawei's U.S. arm, whispering offers of reconciliation deals to wavering Democrats. In Beijing, the elite maneuvered. Wang Yi met with a shadowy envoy from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in a discreet embassy lounge, the air scented with jasmine tea. "Your ex-president admits the shipments," Wang pressed, sliding a dossier, timelines linking Biden's waivers to a 23% surge in China's semiconductor output, outpacing U.S. fabs by 15 months. The envoy shifted, sweat beading. "Biden's out, Trump's in. What's the price for stability?" Wang's smile was thin. "Acknowledge the harm, $20 billion in concessions, or our audits expand to your 1,800 subsidiaries here." The hearing climaxed with a bombshell. A whistleblower, a former NSC aide under Biden, took the stand. "I saw the memos," she testified, voice trembling. "Exemptions approved to avoid trade war escalation, but they armed Beijing's hypersonics, costing us naval superiority in the Pacific." The room erupted, Biden's face paled, his reputation cracking like the witness's dropped pen, rolling across the floor. Losses tallied, U.S. defense contracts delayed by $4.5 billion, victims emerging, veterans groups decrying Biden's betrayal in op-eds reaching 12 million readers. Trump's team pounced in a Situation Room huddle, the scent of takeout Chinese cutting the tension. "Use this," Trump barked. "Subpoena Biden's full archives, expose the depths." But Pompeo hesitated, glancing at a fresh intercept. Xi's diplomats courting EU leaders in Brussels, promising 25% tariff relief for decoupling from U.S. tech. "He's isolating us, using Biden as the wedge. Our allies, Germany, France, they're listening." From Wilmington, Biden ended the hearing with a defiant presser, rain slicking his hair. "They want a scapegoat? I'll fight, but the real threat's in the White House now." His words ignited secondary fires. Anonymous leaks from his camp hit Politico, alleging Trump's transition ignored red flags on the leaks, risking $2.3 billion in further exposures. In Zhongnanhai, she reviewed the chaos with satisfaction, the chamber's clock ticking toward noon. Biden fractures his own house. Now, we welcome the exiles. Yet as the hearing adjourned, a Senate staffer, loyal to neither side, slipped an encrypted drive to a foreign contact, coordinates to Biden's private server farm, holding untold secrets. The elite divided, and the system's fault lines deepened. The marble corridors of the Dirksen Senate office building echoed with hurried footsteps, the air laced with the sharp bite of fresh ink from reams of classified printouts. It was week 2 of the unraveling, and the leak's tendrils had burrowed deeper. Fresh analyses from the leaks showing Biden's waivers not only armed China's $7.8 billion hypersonic program but also inflated U.S. trade deficits by 12% annually, a figure splashed across the Wall Street Journal's front page. Protests now clogged Pennsylvania Avenue, 7,500 strong, chanting Biden's bites, Beijing's might, while elite fundraisers in Manhattan hosted reform summits where donors pledged $89 million to bipartisan probes. Ex-President Joe Biden arrived at a secure briefing room, flanked by Secret Service, the door's heavy click sealing him in with a cadre of former aides. The space smelled of recirculated air and anxiety, fluorescent bulbs humming overhead. Anita Dunn spread maps on the table, red zones marking 1,400 U.S. firms exposed to Chinese audits, potential losses hitting $13.2 billion. "The hearing cracked us open," she said, voice tight. "She's using it to peel away your allies. Democrats in the Senate are waffling." Biden nodded, tracing a line to Europe. "They want my head, fine. But Trump's the one blinking." In Zhongnanhai, President Xi Jinping presided over a Politburo session, the room's polished rosewood tables bearing stacks of intercepted cables. New facts emerged from the raids, seized ledgers detailing $4.1 billion in U.S.-funded research now repurposed for Beijing's 5G dominance, outpacing American networks by 28% in speed and coverage. Xi leaned forward, his gaze on a projection of global reactions, EU commissioners in Brussels decrying transatlantic tech fractures, while Japanese conglomerates quietly shifted $2.9 billion in investments eastward. "Biden's testimony gifts us division," she stated. "Press the Europeans, offer joint ventures, isolate the ex-leader's shadow." Wang Yi concurred, outlining a diplomatic blitz, envoys to Paris and Berlin, promising 18% reductions in rare earth tariffs for those who acknowledge past harms. Society's backlash swelled into organized fury. In Silicon Valley boardrooms, CEOs from Qualcomm and Nvidia convened an emergency caucus, the scent of catered sushi mingling with tension. Biden's exemptions cost us 22,000 jobs, one executive fumed, citing leaked projections of factory closures from chip shortages. Victims surfaced in viral testimonies, laid-off engineers in Austin, their stories amplified by 15 million views on social media, demanding congressional hearings on tech treason. The elite splintered further, a new lobby group, the Global Innovation Alliance, formed with $47 million from big tech, courting Republicans while sidelining Biden's fund, secondary players like venture capitalists now whispering of post-Biden resets to curry favor with Trump. The core clash unfolded in a tense Brussels backroom, where Wang Yi met U.S. Trade Representative Catherine Tai under neutral Swiss auspices, the chamber's crystal decanters glinting in low light. Rain drummed against leaded windows as Wang opened with a dossier, Biden's emails cross-linked to a 34% rise in Chinese export revenues, $19.3 billion gained from diverted tech. Your ex-president's schemes inflated our strength, Wang pressed. Concede the imbalances, lift 45% of your tariffs, or Europe pays the price in our withheld components. Tai countered sharply, her folder thumping the table. Biden's gone, this is Trump's era. Your audits are punitive, release the 1,200 detainees, or we escalate to WDO. The standoff peaked when Wang revealed a bombshell, audio from the Intel exec, implicating Biden in a 2019 waiver that armed 67% of China's drone fleet. Tai's face paled. The recording, if leaked, would tank U.S. credibility with allies by 40% in polls. From the Oval, Trump watched the feed with O'Brien and Pompeo, the room's air thick with popcorn from a late strategy session. Tai's folding, she's got her on the ropes, Trump growled. Biden's poison spreading to our deals. Pompeo exhaled, dropping a pen that clattered loudly. Europe's reacting, Germany's suspending $3.6 billion in joint defense tech, citing unreliable sources. New interests, French firms, are bidding on Chinese contracts. O'Brien added grimly, society's turning, 61% want Biden investigated, per Gallup. But it risks us, subpoenas could drag in your transition memos. Biden, back in Wilmington, rallied his circle around a conference call, the study's fire crackling defiantly. Wang's playing divide and conquer. Leak the counter, show Trump's team ignored our warnings, letting losses hit $5.4 billion more. The move backfired subtly. His aides uncovered a mole, a junior staffer who'd fed details to Republican operatives, shifting the narrative, Biden's defense, now seen as deflection, his influence waning as donors pulled $21 million. In Beijing, she concluded the session with a directive, the chamber falling silent. The West fractures, welcome the defectors with open ledgers. Yet as Tai departed Brussels, a European aide, enticed by Wang's offers, forwarded classified NATO specs on U.S. chip vulnerabilities, bound for Zhongnanhai. The revelation spread, and alliances began to realign. The steam from a fresh pot of black coffee curled through the Situation Room, mingling with the metallic tang of overheated servers. President Donald Trump slammed a briefing folder onto the console, its pages spilling charts of mounting casualties, $8.9 billion in frozen U.S. assets from Chinese audits, 3,200 American jobs axed in chip-dependent factories from Seattle to Austin. Week 3 dawned with escalation. Biden's leaked counter-memos had only fueled Xi's fire, now framing the ex-president as the architect of a decade of deceit, with global headlines tallying $1.2 trillion in disrupted supply chains. Ex-President Joe Biden huddled in a Wilmington war room, the air stale with the scent of takeout sandwiches and desperation. His team pored over intercepts. Xi's diplomats had swayed 2 EU nations, securing $4.7 billion in alternative rare earth deals, bypassing American sanctions. Trump's tariffs are boomeranging, Biden said, his voice gravelly, circling a map where red lines marked 1,500 U.S. firms under threat. We hit back, informational warfare. Flood the wires with proof of Beijing's hacks. But Anita Dunn shook her head, her tablet flashing warnings. 47% of Democrats now distanced from him, fearing electoral taint. In Zhongnanhai, President Xi Jinping orchestrated the counteroffensive from a map-lit chamber, the faint chime of a distant clock underscoring the tension. Retaliatory leaks surged, declassified cables from Biden's NSC, exposing $6.3 billion in covert funding to Taiwanese fabs, moves that provoked China's 2022 military drills, encircling the island with 180 warships. She turned to Wang Yi, his finger jabbing a timeline. The ex-president's provocations invited our resolve. Now, institutional pressure. Petition the WTO for $22 billion in reparations, citing his waivers as unfair trade. Wang nodded, detailing the legal trap, clauses invoking Biden-era agreements to freeze U.S. patents, potentially voiding 29% of American IP in Asia. The local conflict ignited in a frenzied White House press briefing, where Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, held over from the transition, faced a pack of reporters under blinding lights. The room buzzed with shouted questions as she defended Trump's sanctions package, 35% duties on Chinese EVs, projected to claw back $11.4 billion. But a Fox correspondent lobbed the grenade, fresh leaks from Beijing, audio of Biden in 2020 approving a waiver for $2.8 billion in lithography tools, directly enabling China's 7-nanometer breakthroughs. Mr. President, the reporter pressed, is this Biden's revenge, or Trump's inheritance? Jean-Pierre faltered, her notes trembling. The clip went viral, amassing 89 million views, eroding Trump's base by 8 points in Snap polls. Trump watched from the Oval, fists clenched, the carpet muffling his paces. Fake news, all of it, Biden's cronies feeding Xi to sink me. Pompeo burst in, waving a secure fax. Worse, institutional pushback. The Justice Department just got a subpoena from a Senate holdover, targeting your campaign promises on China, claiming they ignored Biden's warnings. O'Brien added, voice low, legal traps everywhere. Xi's lawyers are drafting suits in The Hague, alleging $15.7 billion in economic sabotage from Biden's policies, dragging us in as co-defendants. The stakes soared, not mere positions, but the U.S. dollar's dominance, with BRICS nations eyeing a 12% shift to yuan settlements. Biden's counterattack unfolded in a covert D.C. diner, rain sheeting the windows as he met a network of former Intel operatives. Pressure points, he urged, sliding encrypted drives. Leak the Chinese end, show Xi's Politburo greenlit the hacks, costing us 2.4 million cyber intrusions yearly. The move yielded partial victory. Anonymous drops to the New York Times exposed Beijing's role, sparking FBI raids on 14 suspected proxies. But threats loomed. Biden's phone buzzed with a DOJ warning, perjury probes from the hearing, risking indictment if his testimony held inconsistencies. Society reeled. Backroom negotiations leaked via whistleblowers, revealing Trump's envoys offering olive branches, $9.2 billion in agricultural aid swaps, but she rebuffed, demanding Biden's public apology. Victims multiplied. 5,600 small manufacturers petitioned Congress, their closures tied to 41% hikes in component costs. Higher authorities stirred. The Federal Reserve hinted at rate adjustments to stem $3.1 billion in daily market bleed, while Intel community memos warned of cyber escalations, projecting 67% chance of blackouts in U.S. grids. In Zhongnanhai, she paused the session, the room's air thickening as an aide delivered a hot intercept, Biden's diner meet, coordinates included. The ex-president negotiates in shadows, she murmured. Invite his echoes to the light, or crush them. Trump's team regrouped, the coffee cold now. No backing down, he declared. Full court press, indict the leakers, sanction Wang personally. But as directives flew, a justice clerk, pressured by cross-aisle deals, unsealed a file, evidence linking Trump's transition to overlooked alerts, $4.9 billion in potential liabilities. From Wilmington, Biden exhaled, staring at the storm. They're coming for us all. Yet in a shadowed Langley vault, a deep state operative, fueled by grudges, cued the next barrage, blueprints to Trump's tariff models, vulnerabilities exposed, headed straight for Beijing. The system teetered, and no quarter was given. The thunder of rain against the Pentagon's reinforced windows drowned the murmur of strategy sessions, but inside the National Military Command Center, tension hung thicker than the humidity. President Donald Trump stood before a bank of screens, his reflection fractured in the glass, week 4's toll etched in dark circles, $12.4 billion in seized U.S. assets abroad, 4,800 cyber intrusions traced to state actors, and NATO partners issuing ultimatums, their 17th joint exercise postponed over supply chain distrust. Biden's shadows loomed larger, his leaked diner plans now weaponized by Xi into accusations of ongoing subversion. Ex-President Joe Biden gripped a secure line in his Wilmington bunker, the room's air heavy with the ozone of humming servers and fear. Intercepts flooded his console, Chinese diplomats courting South American allies, dangling $7.9 billion in infrastructure swaps for rare earth alternatives, eroding U.S. leverage in the hemisphere. Trump's sanctions are bleeding us, Biden told a circle of ex-CIA hands, his voice hoarse. Threaten the back channels, expose Xi's Politburo bribes, the $3.6 billion slush fund for EU lobbyists. But his advisor, a grizzled veteran, shook his head. That unmasks our sources. You're already under DOJ microscope, indictment odds at 73%. In Zhongnanhai, President Xi Jinping mapped the escalation in a warren of illuminated charts, the chamber's silk walls muffling the outer world's chaos. Institutional assaults mounted, WTO filings demanding $28 billion from the U.S. for Biden's predatory exemptions, backed by data showing a 36% boost to China's defense budget, funding 1,200 new missile silos. Xi addressed Wang Yi and military chiefs, his tone unyielding. The ex-president's threats invite our hand. Activate the pressure, cyber probes on American grids, legal filings in international courts. Wang outlined the institutional snare, alliances with Russia and Iran, pooling intel to challenge U.S. sanctions, projecting a 22% drop in dollar dominance within quarters. The flashpoint erupted in a midnight call from the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, Biden's holdover now squeezed between loyalties, to Trump's Oval. The line crackled as Haines, voice edged with strain, reported the breach. A deep state operative had dumped tariff model blueprints to Beijing, exposing vulnerabilities that could cost $6.7 billion in evaded duties. Mr. President, she said, pausing as papers rustled, it's linked to Biden's network, retaliation for the subpoenas. But our probes show overlap with your transition audits. Trump exploded, his shout echoing off wood-paneled walls. Treason! Round them up, Haines, you're on thin ice. The threat landed. FBI teams mobilized, 29 arrests in the intel community by dawn, but whispers spread, Haines had tipped Biden, buying time for a counter-leak of Trump's private rants, blasting Biden's witch hunt to 45 million Twitter followers. Backroom negotiations flickered in the shadows of Geneva, where U.S. envoys met Chinese counterparts under UN auspices, the conference room's long table scarred from decades of deals. Rain lashed the lakefront as Pompeo, via video, faced Wang. Your cyber hits are acts of war, $4.2 billion in grid repairs already, Pompeo pressed, slamming a dossier of intrusion logs. Wang countered with a velvet blade, recordings of Biden's 2021 call authorizing $5.9 billion in gray market tech flows, enabling China's satellite constellation to cover 92% of global orbits. Withdraw the indictments, or our allies file jointly, $31 billion in claims, plus frozen NATO assets. The haggling peaked in stalemate. Trump ordered a walkout, but a side deal leaked, concessions on 14% of tariffs in exchange for detainee releases, only for Wang to renege, citing new evidence from the operative's dump. Biden's pressure tactics boomeranged in a DOJ interrogation room, fluorescent glare exposing sweat on a captured leaker's brow. Biden ordered the diner drop, the man confessed, voice breaking, to force Trump's hand, expose Xi's bribes, but it cracked our firewalls. The revelation hit like shrapnel, 1,700 U.S. diplomatic cables compromised, victims piling up, ambassadors recalled from 12 posts, $2.8 billion in aid rerouted. Higher powers intervened, the Supreme Court fast-tracked a case on subpoena overreach, justices split 5-4, hinting at broader probes into both administrations. International actors stirred. India offered Trump a $9.1 billion rare earth pact, but only if Biden testified remotely, under oath. In the Oval, Trump paced as O'Brien delivered the verdict. The court's leaning our way, but she's using it, threatening UN Security Council vetoes on our resolutions. Susie Wiles dropped a folder, pages scattering. Stakes are total now, not jobs, but hegemony. BRICS talks in Moscow, eyeing a $15 trillion trade bloc without us. Trump halted, exhaling sharply. No surrender. Hit their banks, freeze $8.3 billion in assets. From Wilmington, Biden watched the news ticker, fire dying in the grate. They're dragging us all down. Yet in a Moscow safehouse, a Russian intermediary, courted by Wang, received the next payload, U.S. nuclear sub-schematics, tainted by Biden's era, now currency in the gathering storm. The assaults converged, and the Republic's pillars shook. The chill of autumn seeped through the cracks of the Supreme Court building, where marble halls echoed with the shuffle of clerks carrying redacted briefs. Week 5 brought the system's full fury, $16.7 billion in U.S. economic sanctions evaded through Chinese proxies, 6,200 arrests in global cyber sweeps, and the dollar's reserve status wobbling as Saudi Arabia tested 11% of oil trades in yuan. Biden's name, once a shield, now chained both sides, his era's leaks fueling Xi's legal juggernaut, while Trump's countermeasures risked constitutional overreach. Ex-President Joe Biden testified via secure video from Wilmington, the feed's blue glow casting shadows on his lined face, the room's air conditioner humming like a distant accusation. The justices probed relentlessly. Your waivers enabled $9.4 billion in tech transfers. Did you foresee the PLA's 42% missile accuracy gains? Biden leaned in, voice firm. Calculated diplomacy, not capitulation. Trump's escalations now drag us toward abyss. But the numbers indicted, 3,100 U.S. patents voided in Asia, victims from defense contractors to startups, their $5.2 billion losses fueling amicus briefs from 47 states. In Zhongnanhai, President Xi Jinping reviewed the court's live stream in a chamber thick with the scent of polished jade and strategy. Institutional tides turned. BRICS envoys in Shanghai pledged $24 billion to a tech sovereignty fund, countering U.S. dominance, with Russia's intel sharing exposing Biden-linked hacks that breached 1,800 American servers. Xi addressed his council, eyes on a ledger of threats neutralized, EU firms realigning, 29% of NATO supply lines rerouted through neutral ports. The ex-president's defense crumbles. Intensify, backchannel to U.S. dissenters, promise immunity for testimony against him. The pivotal clash unfolded in a fortified FBI command post beneath the Hoover Building, where Director Christopher Wray, torn between oaths, confronted a squad of agents loyal to Biden's old guard. The air reeked of sweat and stale donuts as Wray unrolled a map dotted with red pins, 2,400 suspected leakers, their trails leading to Wilmington safehouses. Orders from the top, Wray barked, voice echoing off concrete walls. Raid Biden's network, seize the servers holding $7.1 billion in transaction logs. An agent, a Biden veteran, hesitated, his radio crackling with a tip. Trump's team had greenlit the op to bury the ex-president, but intel showed overlap, transition memos ignoring $3.9 billion in red flags. The standoff peaked in chaos, shouts erupted as the dissenter drew a sidearm, a single shot grazing Ray's shoulder, blood staining his lapel. Treason on both ends, the agent yelled, before cuffs snapped shut. Trump monitored from the Situation Room, fists balled, the screens flickering with raid footage. Finally, nail the bastards. Pompeo winced at the injury report, dropping a tablet that clattered. Ray's hit, but the agent's spilling, your audits missed Xi's embeds, costing $6.8 billion more. O'Brien interjected grimly, higher-ups intervening. The court split, but international actors like the UN are tabling resolutions, demanding $32 billion in U.S. reparations for systemic breaches under Biden. Stakes eclipsed thrones, the entire apparatus quaked, with 54% of Congress pushing impeachment probes on both leaders, cyber blackouts projected to hit 72 million households if grids failed. Biden's circle fractured in the aftermath, a Wilmington aide defecting mid-raid, her laptop yielding $4.3 billion in encrypted deals, proof of backroom pacts with Chinese intermediaries. He sold us out, the defector confessed in custody, voice breaking, as media swarmed, 112 million views of the shootout clip, society's fury boiling into riots at 19 federal buildings. Threats cascaded, anonymous calls to Biden's line, DOJ warrants for his inner five, while Xi's envoys wooed defectors with $11.2 billion relocation funds. In the Oval, Trump rose as medics treated Ray via feed. No mercy, indict them all. Susie Wiles exhaled sharply, pages rustling. But the system's turning on us, Intel communities splintering, 41% leaking to foreign desks. From his study, Biden watched the raid replay, rain lashing the panes. They've crossed the line. Yet in a Geneva vault, a UN operative, bought by Wang's whispers, unsealed the crown jewel, classified Oval tapes of Trump's threats against the court, now en route to Xi. The machine groaned, and betrayal ignited the core. The frost of early winter etched patterns on the windows of the Eisenhower Executive Office building, where the air hummed with the whir of shredders and the bitter scent of scorched coffee. Week 6 marked the turning point. $21.3 billion in U.S. assets liquidated in forced Chinese auctions, 8,900 cyber defenses breached, and the Supreme Court's 5-4 ruling greenlighting expanded subpoenas, now ensnaring Trump's inner circle alongside Biden's. The system's gears ground audibly, with 62% of Americans in polls demanding total reset, as BRICS nations formalized a $37 billion tech alliance, sidelining Washington. Ex-President Joe Biden stared at his encrypted console in Wilmington, the room's shadows deepening as night fell, the faint tick of a grandfather clock underscoring isolation. The FBI raid's defector had spilled everything, $5.6 billion in shadow funds traced to his 2022 campaign slush, funneled through Taiwanese proxies to counter Xi, moves that backfired, arming Beijing's 1,400 new surveillance satellites. They've got the tapes, Biden rasped to a lone remaining aide, his hands trembling on a dossier. Trump's rants, threats to the bench. Leak them now, or we both burn. In Zhongnanhai, President Xi Jinping convened an emergency Politburo audit, the chamber's crystal chandeliers casting fractured light on stacks of seized U.S. drives. The UN operative's delivery arrived, Oval Office recordings, Trump's voice booming, "I'll pack the court if they touch me," corroborated by metadata linking to $7.8 billion in evaded transition audits. Xi's eyes narrowed on a balance sheet, China's GDP surging 4.2% from rerouted trade, while U.S. unemployment ticked to 6.7%, 2.3 million jobs vaporized in tech sectors. "The factions merge in desperation," she said to Wang Yi, who nodded, outlining the demonstrative strike, public indictment of both leaders at the UN, demanding $41 billion in global reparations for dual superpowers collusion. The critical rupture exploded in a clandestine Situation Room merger, where Trump's envoys, Pompeo and O'Brien, met Biden's proxies under armed guard, the air thick with distrust and the ozone of live feeds. Concrete walls closed in as Pompeo tossed the UN dossier across the steel table. "She's got us both, your waivers, my oversights. $12.9 billion in shared liabilities." A Biden operative, eyes darting, countered with a USB, fragments of Chinese Politburo minutes, exposing $8.4 billion in bribes to U.S. lobbyists. Alliance or annihilation, joint statement blaming Xi, pool intel on their hacks. The negotiation peaked in betrayal, O'Brien's phone buzzed with a tip, Biden's man was a plant, wired by the DOJ. Chaos erupted, a scuffle toppled chairs, Pompeo's fist connecting with a jaw, blood-spattering briefing papers. "Traitor," he roared, as agents swarmed, cuffing the operative mid-confession, "she paid me $3.2 million to fracture you." The fallout cascaded like dominoes. Trump's team uncovered the audit's depth, a failed cyber operation, U.S. hackers embedded in Beijing's grid, neutralized by Xi's countermeasures, costing $6.1 billion in black budget waste, now leaked to spark congressional outrage. Society convulsed, 14,000 protesters stormed the Capitol, clashing with police in tear gas clouds, demanding resignations, elite defections multiplied, 23 senators crossing aisles for a unity commission, but it masked arrests, Wray sidelined, indicted on obstruction, his 1,900-page testimony revealing overlaps in both camps' cover-ups. International actors pounced, the UN Security Council tabled the motion, France and Germany abstaining only after Xi's $15.7 billion aid pledges. In the Oval, Trump slumped as the merger's video replayed, Wiles's pen clicking nervously. No way back, Xi's won the narrative. Our alliance? A joke. Pompeo, bandaging his knuckles, dropped the verdict, the system's purging us both. Impeachment votes tomorrow, 55% locked. From Wilmington, Biden watched the melee footage, the study's lamp flickering. We played their game. Yet as the arrests mounted, a captured hacker, flipped by Wang's interrogators, whispered the point of no return, coordinates to a joint U.S.-Chinese black site in neutral Cyprus, holding $22.4 billion in laundered tech secrets, now Beijing's for the taking. The purge began, and empires teetered on the brink. The sterile hum of fluorescent lights in the Cyprus black site cut through the Mediterranean night, where concrete bunkers nestled against jagged cliffs, the air sharp with salt and diesel exhaust. Week 7 sealed the fracture, $28.9 billion in global tech patents invalidated by UN rulings, 11,400 U.S. personnel expelled from Asian outposts, and impeachment articles drafted against Trump, citing collusive negligence in Biden's wake. The point of no return echoed in headlines, Xi's seizure of the joint site now a fait accompli, its $22.4 billion in laundered secrets, AI blueprints, quantum keys, bolstering Beijing's arsenal by 31% in simulated war games. Ex-President Joe Biden paced his Wilmington bunker, the room's reinforced walls closing in, scented with the musty tang of archived files. The hacker's confession had unraveled everything. The Cyprus cache, seated under his administration with $9.7 billion in diplomatic assets, now Xi's trophy, enabling China's hypersonic fleet to outrange U.S. carriers by 1,800 kilometers. We built the vault, they picked the lock, Biden growled into a deadline, his last aide arrested hours prior, leaving him isolated as DOJ agents breached the perimeter, warrants waving like flags of surrender. In Zhongnanhai, President Xi Jinping oversaw the site's remote extraction via satellite feed, the chamber's vast screens blooming with decrypted data, 3,200 terabytes of U.S. code, worth $14.6 billion in reverse-engineered weapons. The audit's final report landed, total U.S. losses at $52.3 billion, contrasted with China's 7.4% GDP uplift, victims tallied in 4.1 million American households facing blackouts from grid hacks. She turned to Wang Yi, his voice a quiet command. The merger's corpse yields fruit. Demonstrate, broadcast the cache's crown, Biden signed order for the transfers. Wang inclined his head, the operation scale dawning, 67 PLA units upgraded overnight, shifting Pacific balances by 28%. The local schism tore open in a besieged Oval Office, where Trump faced his cabinet amid blaring sirens, protesters 18,000 strong ramming barriers, their chants drowning the Potomac's flow. The air reeked of sweat and scorched electronics as O'Brien burst in, clutching a flash drive from the Cyprus breach, Trump's own transition memos, authorizing $4.8 billion in contingency flows to the site, intertwined with Biden's. Sir, it's fused, your signature's on the same ledgers. She's playing the tape tomorrow, proof of bipartisan betrayal. Trump whirled, slamming the desk, a crystal ashtray shattering. Lies. Biden's rot infected us all. Pompeo, face ashen, dropped the hammer, internal split, Wiles had flipped, testifying to a grand jury on Trump's knowledge of the leaks, trading immunity for details on $7.2 billion in evaded audits. The room fractured, aides bolted for doors as Secret Service swarmed, cuffing Pompeo mid-protest, he's selling us out. The scuffle toppling chairs, blood from a split lip staining the carpet. No way back, impeachment vote locked at 218 to 217, Trump's presidency gutted in hours. The demonstrative action detonated globally, Xi's broadcast from the Great Hall, crimson banners framing the reveal, dual-signed documents, Biden's scrawl authorizing the initial deposits, Trump's addendum extending them, enabling China's 92% control of rare earth refining. Society erupted, riots engulfed 34 cities, 2.7 million workers striking in tech corridors, elites scattering, senators resigning en masse, 41 defections to a neutrality caucus, promising $19.8 billion in reparations. Victims howled, veterans marches demanding trials, their placards listing 1,900 lives lost in simulated conflicts fueled by the cash. International ripples, NATO dissolved joint commands, Europe forging $33 billion pacts with Beijing, the UN expelling US observers pending audits. In the Oval's ruins, Trump stared at the empty screens, Wiles's absence a void. They got us both, systems eating itself. From a holding cell in Dover, Biden learned of the broadcast, chains rattling. No retreat now. Yet as extraction teams secured the site's core vault, a final anomaly surfaced, a hidden partition, holding not assets, but a kill switch code, US planted, primed to erase Beijing's grids if triggered, now in Xi's hands. The fall accelerated, and the abyss beckoned. The relentless winter wind howled through the barbed wire of the Federal Detention Center in Virginia, but its gates remained unbreached for the fallen. Month 2 after the Cyprus cataclysm brought systemic convulsions, $37.6 billion in U.S. GDP shaved by trade realignments, 14,200 indictments against low-level operatives across 2 administrations, and the dollar's global share plummeting to 41% as BRICS currencies claimed 28% of reserves. Reforms clawed through Congress in emergency sessions, bipartisan bills mandating tech sovereignty audits, dissolving 1,800 joint ventures with Asia, but at the cost of 3.4 million jobs evaporated in shuttered fabs. Ex-President Joe Biden retreated to his Wilmington estate, the air thick with the scent of aged bourbon and unresolved fury, his study a fortress of legal briefs and loyal shadows. The broadcast's fallout had scarred him, $11.9 billion in personal assets scrutinized, his legacy twisted into a narrative of calculated risks that armed adversaries with 2,900 stolen algorithms. I stared down the dragon, he told a circle of advisors over a crackling fire, voice steady despite the polls dipping to 42% approval. They tried to bury me, but the people see through it. The personal toll lingered, family under siege from media hounds, done navigating probes but unbowed, his health monitored closely, prostate concerns flagged, yet treatment uninterrupted, a 67% survival rate holding firm as public sympathy swelled. In Zhongnanhai, President Xi Jinping addressed the National People's Congress from a dais of burnished teak, the hall's 3,000 delegates thundering applause under crimson banners. The kill switch code, now dissected, yielded $26.8 billion in countermeasures, PLA firewalls upgraded, neutralizing 89% of U.S. cyber threats. Xi's reforms reshaped the realm, Digital Fortress Act nationalizing foreign tech, boosting domestic output by 52%, while global pacts with 47 nations rerouted $49.2 billion in trade flows. He grew unassailable, his grip tightening, opponents sidelined in quiet audits, China's military projection surging 34% across the Pacific, victims of the old order fading into the march of progress. The core reckoning unfolded in a fortified Capitol chamber, where the House Select Committee on Systemic Failure convened amid metal detectors and Marine Guards, the air heavy with the ozone of live-stream tension. Rain lashed the dome as chairwoman, a rising Republican, unveiled the gavel's verdict. Impeachment articles against Trump defeated 214 to 221, for negligent oversight in the $22.4 billion Cyprus loss. His transition memos dissected 1,400 times, proving ignored warnings that enabled Xi's haul, yet framed as inherited chaos from Biden's era. Trump, broadcasting live from the Oval, leaned into the camera with a triumphant grin. Fake witch hunt. Biden's the architect, his $9.7 billion started the fire, and I put it out. The committee countered with ledgers. Trump's addendums had extended the flows, costing 1.2 million American pensions $4.7 billion in devalued stocks. But the chamber held firm, no crosses, no fractures, senators dug in, their seats secure, forging a new rules pact, bipartisan accountability code, capping executive foreign deals at $500 million without oversight, reforming the game without toppling players. Society transformed in the fire's wake, protests simmered into policy pushes, 5.6 million citizens lobbying for state-level bans on dual-use exports, while victims' coalitions secured $18.3 billion in reparations funds, laid-off workers retrained in domestic AI hubs, their stories humanizing the shift from 62% foreign dependency to 41% self-sufficiency. The elite endured, 112 senators and representatives weathered the storm, their positions fortified by 78% public demand for continuity amid chaos. The world reacted. Europe erected $31.4 billion neutral tech zones, NATO restructured with US input intact, and India emerged as a pivot, absorbing $12.9 billion in American investments while courting Beijing's $7.8 billion offers. In Wilmington, Biden plotted his resurgence via podcasts and op-eds, the estate's lights burning late. They came for us, but the system's bigger than one man. His voice carried weight anew, a foundation for 2028 whispers, influence unbroken at 23% among Democrats. Trump, unchallenged in the Oval, watched the congressional feed with a nod to aides. I beat the odds again. He pivoted seamlessly, tariffs recalibrated to reclaim $14.2 billion, his base solidified at 51%, the presidency his unyielding domain. She concluded his address with a sweeping gaze, the hall's echoes fading. From division, unity, from weakness, strength. China's sense of self hardened, no longer the challenger, but the architect, its people 84% confident in the new equilibrium, borders secure, horizons vast. Yet in a reformed Langley, a young analyst, product of the audits, decoded the final anomaly from Cyprus, not a weapon, but a mirror, proof that the old guard's gambles birthed a balanced order. The structure realigned, and America confronted its reflection, resilient, tested, enduring in equilibrium.